The backlash against people from Russia, people of Russian descent, and anything related to Russian culture that we're currently seeing in the West is a recognition of their impotency to do anything to change the flow of events in Ukraine and perhaps more broadly now, the world over. Many people recognize that when Putin, crossed, not really a Rubicon, because it wasn't a river that he crossed the border into Ukraine and went ahead with this invasion, that it represented a paradigm shift in international relations. For the first time since the end of the Cold War now, over 30 years, this is the first time that a state which has the blessing and is really a darling of the West and of the United States, Washington, Brussels, has been threatened, and very clearly is going to, at some point here, be completely at the mercy of the Russians, or any other country. It doesn't have to be Russia. But in this case, it's the Russians. And there's nothing that they can do about it. It's recognized. The U.S. is not going to go and start carpet bombing the Russians in Ukraine. That would be ridiculous. And the enormous advantage that the U.S. has in soft power at the end of the day is not the kind of thing that's going to be able to cripple an advancing army. American soft power, CIA influence and whatnot, can overturn elections. It can conduct regime change operations. They can destabilize economies. But at the end of the day, if Russia wants to go in and seize half of Ukraine, that's what they're going to do. And the U.S. can't do anything about it. And so they're lashing out, not just the U.S., not just the government, not just, like the spies and the military. The whole of Western liberal society is lashing out against anything associated with Russia. The first thing that the first case of this hysteria that I saw was people saying that bars should no longer serve Moscow mules. They should be called Mariupol mules. You can't have something named after Moscow because Russia bad. The next thing I saw was they were smashing bottles of Russian vodka, saying, no, we're not going to drink Russian vodka anymore. Then they started expelling Russians from sports tournaments and from the Olympics now. The World Cup has expelled the Russians, and now even young athletes in George Gammon brought up a Canadian Hockey League up in Canada. This is a kid who's on track to become a professional hockey player, probably in Canada or in playing the NHL maybe one day. He's 16 years old now or something. Is just kicked out. He's out. They said, no, we don't want you here anymore. You're Russian, so you have no career. You have no future. And why are they doing that? Well, it's clear. People are taking out their rage on anything associated with Russia because they can't affect, the Russian government, the Russian army, or Putin himself. It was interesting. I was listening to a debate between George Gammon today and Chris Irons, who's Quoth the Raven, which has a wonderful financial podcast. But it would appear that, if this debate is any indication, that he's just absolutely deranged when it comes to this war with Russia, because he's very happy to blame ordinary people, even people who don't live in Russia, people who have absolutely no influence over the Russian political system, which supposedly we're told Putin is a dictator, yet we're supposed to blame the voters who didn't vote for him because he's a if he's a dictator, you can't blame the voters. If you're mad at these people because you're not mad at them for electing Putin, you say that he's a dictator and that nobody likes him. So which is it? But they're going even further than that. They're not just attacking Russian people in Russia. They're going after Russian people all around the world. There is very serious discussions in countries across the West to just want to expel Russian students who are over there studying in universities, or presumably, I would think, in lower levels of education too. Let's say you have a Russian exchange student in a high school. You know, that kid's probably on the chopping block. And obviously, this is going to have no impact on the Russian war effort. You know, you kick some Russians out of college, or you kick them out of a hockey league in Canada, that's not going to make Putin reconsider and say, you know what, I was wrong about this whole thing in Ukraine. I think I'm going to turn around and go home now. Sorry, guys. No, all it's going to do is just make the people who are affected angry and upset, and it's going to hurt them. Oh, the other ridiculous thing, the Russian Tea House, which is apparently a restaurant, or maybe like a tea or a cafe or something in New York City. This is an American business. It's American-owned, but it has the word Russian in the name. From what I understand, I guess maybe at some point it was founded by Russian people. Maybe it has some Russian... It's a theme for a restaurant. You know, it's like going and... so what's happening is people are boycotting them and saying that they should change their name to the Ukrainian Tea House. Not kidding. People are that dumb. You know, and they had to put out a press release saying, oh, we're so sorry, you know, we condemn Russia invading Ukraine. Please, we have nothing to do with the Russian government. It's just we have Russian in the name of our business. We're not affiliated with Russia. And people are in the replies on Twitter condemning them and saying, haha, nice try. We're not going to fall for your tricks, Ruskies. You need to change your name to the Ukrainian Tea House. This is a business that somehow survived 2 years of COVID lockdowns in New York City, when so many historic businesses there completely went under, and now these folks are going to go under because they have the word Russian in their name. And Chris Irons and so many other people in the West support this because they say, well, we have to do something. What else can we do? It's like, what else can you do other than just try and make the lives of people who have no influence over this situation difficult? Destroy the careers of young kids who happen to be born in Russia and are trying to, start a career or get an education or something like that. Well, we can't do anything to hurt Putin himself, so we have to hurt these people. That's what they're saying. They're saying we're impotent. There's nothing we can do. That's right. There's nothing you can do. I mean, what are you going to do? Try and cut Russia off from oil? They've got their own oil. You want to do an oil embargo on Russia? You're going to be embargoing yourself. Hell, even Jen Psaki came out today and said, well, there's no appetite for trying to stop Russian oil imports into the United States. The U.S. is still going to be buying oil from Russia while all this is going on. What does that tell you? America and the West is impotent. They're desperate to do anything to, virtue signal that they hate Russia. And since, they at least have enough sense to know that sending in the tanks to fight for Ukraine and try and bomb the Russians or something like that, they know that that's too crazy because then they'll get nuked, which Lavrov explicitly stated, which, is not news. That's just reality. If we have a third world war, it's going to be nuclear. That's why there hasn't been a world war since 1945, because, how did World War II end? It ended with the United States dropping 2 nuclear bombs. And that taught the world, hey, going to wars with other countries, that's just not really an option. Not an option to go to war with one of these nuclear-armed states. And so then once, a bunch of countries had nukes, then all of a sudden those countries were not going to war with each other because their leaders wanted to survive. They wanted to live. And while I wouldn't shy away from calling the current leadership in the West suicidal, I don't think they're quite that suicidal. I think that they want to commit cultural suicide, but I don't think they're quite ready to commit physical suicide. These aren't people who really want to die. And so I'm holding out my last hope that at least, that instinct is still alive within them, and they won't lead us into a nuclear war. I'd much rather see them do this virtue signaling thing, but again, the virtue signaling is so pointless. It's pathetic, and, it's cruel, of course, to the people that they're doing it to. And I think that George Gammon is right for pointing out, we're only a week into this war. How long does it take before we get to internment camps? It was more than it was. Let me think. I can't remember how soon after Pearl Harbor FDR signed Japanese internment. He already had the executive order drafted up before Pearl Harbor, which should, that should tell you a little something about maybe Pearl Harbor or about FDR's attitude towards the Japanese, but that's not the subject for today. And don't forget, in World War I, the United States interned German Americans, American citizens who were of German descent, for the same reason as they interned the Japanese Americans. So it's not at all far-fetched. In the last two world wars, the U.S. put its own citizens in camps because of their ancestry. So it's not very far-fetched, if we're talking about the prospects for a new world war, that the U.S. would again put even its own citizens into internment camps. After all, I think that there are a lot of people in America who would support putting supporters of the Orange Man, Putin's puppet, into internment camps. Certainly there's been support for putting the unvaccinated into internment camps. And so at this point, why not do it with Russians? I mean, that seems comparatively reasonable or moderate compared to putting away, all Trump supporters or all of the unvaccinated people. How many Russians could there be in America and all these other countries? It would be pretty easy to round them all up and put them in cages, of course, for their own safety. So, at the end of the day, if the West cancels Russia and the Russian people and Russian culture, if they, in fact, do cancel an entire culture, as ridiculous as that sounds, what will be the end result? Will they be able to achieve their goals? Will they be able to thwart Russia's invasion of Ukraine? No, I think that's pretty clear. Will they be able to maybe perhaps spur some kind of regime change in Russia? Will people just get so fed up with the way that the West is treating them and then turn on Putin because they blame it because, the West is going to say, well, we're only doing this because of Putin, so if you get rid of Putin, we'll let you guys, we'll treat you guys like normal people again. That is the basic argument for sanctions that we always get from the DC think tank types who advocate for putting sanctions on foreign countries. Well, let's look back and see how that's worked out in the past. You had Iraq in the 1990s, who was sanctioned after the Gulf War, the Second Gulf War, 1991. While there are estimates that up to 500,000 children may have died as a result of those sanctions, the people of Iraq did not rise up and overthrow Saddam Hussein in a fit of rage because they blamed him for the sanctions. That did not happen. Saddam Hussein was only forced out of office when the U.S. invaded Iraq. Then we have the case of Iran, who has been sanctioned on and off for quite a few years. The Iranian government is still firmly in place. They have to, they don't engage so much with the West. They're unable to, do a lot of things. It's tough for them to export their oil, but they've gotten by. Iran still exists. The Ayatollah is still the supreme leader. They have not reinstalled the son of the Shah. And then, of course, we have Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro, the bus driver, is still in power. And Juan Guaido, I don't know. I haven't heard from Juan Guaido in a long time. I'm not sure what he's up to these days, but he sure as hell isn't the president of Venezuela. So it's pretty clear that these sanctions will have no effect. They will not get rid of Putin. They will not end the war. All they serve to do is, penalize people who happen to have been born in the wrong country. All they do is make people who hate Russians right now feel a little better because they feel like, oh, well, we're doing something. It is, it's truly the equivalent of Ralph from The Simpsons saying, I'm helping. So I don't think I will get into any kind of like a military update. I don't know if I haven't seen a whole lot of stuff today, but that's what's been kind of on my mind. it's good to address some of the meta and not just, the day-to-day combat stuff, because, maybe that can get a little monotonous. So, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.